Welcome to another town hall meeting gathering as we celebrate this year Moments of Grace. As a town hall dialogue about all those moments in our lives when we know God is present and God is asking us to be present to others in our lives and our relationships. This year we've been specifically looking at all the sacraments, and this month, February, we're looking at marriage. Valentine's Day, looking at during this winter coming up, how we're stuck in the house together as you two have been, and you're still surviving and doing well.
Pretty well.
Doing pretty well. Yeah. But that's the gift and the grace of, again, being in a relationship and knowing that God is with us at those times, the good times and the bad times. Let's take a moment in prayer and just ask God to gift us with the opportunity this morning to really know that we are in a relationship with you, our God, and that through the presence of Christ in our lives, that we are here in our relationships in that same way. So bless and gift us on our journey. Help us to know that you continue to give us the strength, the courage to reach out, not only to those who live with us or close to us, our families, but also to those in need in our world today. So gift us with your strength, gift us with that always capacity and possibility of coming together as your people. As we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. So Tony, who's with us today?
Well, we are privileged to be able to be in the beautiful home of Jim and Barb Spitzer. This is a lovely place over in East De Pere, and so thank you for welcoming us into your home. So Jim is a retired dentist of many years, and Barb is a retired school teacher. Barb, as we know from our Generations of Disciples program, is also a concert-trained pianist, and so she's got great talents there as well. So thanks for being part of the town hall meeting. We're just so blessed to be able to come to your home and to share in your life and your marriage and your relationship and talk a little bit about that. So. Sounds great. I guess I would get the ball started by asking, so when did this relationship start? How did you meet? Tell us the whole love story about how did you meet, how did the relationship develop, and then how did marriage come about? Give us the whole spiel.
Now we want the Hallmark version.
Perfect.
You want to start or should I?
You want to start?
I can start. I guess I'd like to start with my foundation. My foundation is where I came from, my family, Catholic all the way through, but that value of the family, the whole thing. And then I went into a phase where first marriage, didn't go to church for 10 years. Pardon me. I've been through a marriage that didn't work, and I know a lot of reasons why. And so when you have something to compare it to, when you go through that, you come out where it's like, okay, one of the cornerstones for us was that we had to spiritually grow together. And the whole how we met and all that, well, we'll get into that in a little bit, but you can say a little bit.
Well, and my background was the same. I was born into a beautiful, loving family, grew up here in East De Pere, and surrounded by just a lot of siblings. I was number 2 of 7, and so always we grew up in a little house not too far down the street from here, a little story and a half, 6 kids in one house. I could relate to Father Ed's story last night where we had to all share beds because there were too many of us in a small space.
Sure.
But it develops values. We were a very faith-filled family. Attended St. Mary Church in De Pere. So faith was very much a part of my life from all the way through. I was pre-Vatican, so. I love Gregorian chant, believe it or not.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was just part of, everything was in Latin when I was going through grade school, and so, that very traditional kind of training, and faith, and then, of course, Vatican II happened, and then I was in high school, and like Father mentioned last night, the hootenannies and the folk music, and so it's always been a part of my life, and attending Catholic schools, and Then off to college, St. Norbert's, and finished up at Indiana University, and went through a first marriage that unfortunately failed after 13 years. But 2 beautiful children, loved them to pieces. And so that was a low point in my life, but I had to pick myself up, and I ended up moving back here to De Pere with my parents and my 2 kids, and because I had gotten a job with the Green Bay schools. And that's how I ended up back here. I'd been living in Fond du Lac at the time. So, but I was getting myself all back together and teaching over at Martin School, 4th grade, and my whole focus was my kids and that they're happy, and got them at St. Mary's, same school I went to. So it felt like I had come back home, and I had the security and the love of my parents because I was living with them. And it was a great experience for my kids. They were 9 and 10 at the time, 4th and 5th grade, that they were kind of under the loving wings and care of their grandparents. So it was a really special time. And so as we moved forward, then I was teaching.
So one day you had to get your teeth cleaned?
Yeah, no, it was, I had the 4th grade teacher,
We put her last in the schedule. So that's not the way it went.
And then
but
went out to
anyhow.
dinner. The rest is history.
No, that's the Hallmark story.
Yeah.
Different story. Huh?
So, well, no, but it's interesting. So I was feeling very confident and, enjoying my teaching, and getting my kids were happy in school, and so I was going through, and my co-teachers, I really enjoyed all the new people my new colleagues, and the 4th grade teacher that I taught with happened to be married to, her husband was Jim's accountant at his dental office.
Okay.
So we had a Christmas party, and they thought I looked lonely, which I was.
So it was the first Christmas after I was back here.
Sure.
And so they thought that it would be great to set up this blind date, and her kids thought that meant I was going to show up with a seeing eye dog and as we progressed for myself, I was about 35, and I was in a relationship between marriages that certainly wouldn't have worked out, and it probably wouldn't have worked. And at the time you're lonely, at the time you're all these things, and you just think that you can make this work, and the truth is there wasn't any parts that would have made it work. One part that was, I valued this spiritual growth going forward, and this person that wasn't part of their life at all. And so at that point, red flags go off quickly, because you start to know some of the mistakes that you made before. I said I didn't go to church for 10 years, and not that God wasn't in my life, but it wasn't in my marriage, that's for sure. It wasn't. So
at what point did you realize, like before the divorce or during the divorce, that you really needed to start practicing your faith? What was the drive?
The driving force was, it's kind of like if you get something, you have to assemble it. I never read the directions. And then when it doesn't work out, then I go to the instructions. Well, it's kind of like that in my life. And so it's like, I know there are no guarantees, but I want more assurance going forward that I wouldn't have to go through this again. Okay, and so I actually went, this before Barb even, I went to several parishes. I ended up at Nativity because it reminded me of all the people on the hillside where Jesus was preaching to all the people. And it's like, okay, well, that's such a big parish. The first thing they say is, well, you just don't come here, you have to do something. It's like, okay, what do you want me to do? It's like, well, we need a teacher for CCD. And it's like, so then they walked me down the hall, and so we got married in that church, actually. You knew Father
Willie
Willie,
Vanderloo.
and a wonderful man. One of my spiritual directors, a very spiritual person, she was a former nun, left the convent. I was at a point where I was looking for someone. I was 35, 36, I think, when I met you. One of the things she said was, instead of try to meet somebody, why don't you just sit in your rocker and read a chapter of the Gospels every night? The chapters are short, just get to know yourself, get to feel good about who you are, get that relationship with you and your God more in order. So I did that, and and she was someone that I could talk to easily. And I said, well, how do you know when it's God's will? And I'll never forget, she said, because it just flows. You don't have to work at it so hard. And I thought that meant a lot, because that in-between relationship, it was a struggle all the time, from morning until night, whatever. And then I meet Barb, and so I got my little checkoff list as her report card to see how she's measuring up here. So the first thing that was clear was that her children were front and center. And it's like, okay, A+, because if that would have been out of order, it's like, well, you know what, I don't think this is going to work. Red flags again, quickly.
Right.
And then, I don't know, we just went out. I mean, I didn't have any children in my first marriage, and so I just felt like I had such a second chance, because now we're approaching 38 and so on, and to have this second chance where I could be part of kids' lives. I came in when they were 9 and 10, so I got all the good stuff. I didn't have to change pants. I didn't have to do any of that, and didn't have to get up during the night. So it was, getting back to what I said, it just flowed, and so that was such a welcoming part for me. I had to date Barb because I liked the kids so much. So
tell us about the blind date.
Yeah, it was a blind date, and you see her daughter pulling the curtain. Who is coming to get my mom? So,
It was hard for me to tell my kids that I was going on a date,
Right.
because this was all new for me, and I didn't have any intention when I was just getting settled up here. I'm just happy living my life and taking care of my kids. So then all this and this opportunity came up. It's like, well, okay, why not?
Right.
And
right.
and they took to
Yeah.
him right away. They just, because he's kind of a funny guy. So
we
keeps-
have fun
keeps
off,
us all
and we laugh
laughing.
off, and her son used to be like the Pink Panther, where somebody just attacks him from anywhere and just comes at you and doesn't give you a warning. We had to replace that railing in the other room because he tackled me from behind. So
he was a little guy back then, fourth
was,
grade.
It was
So,
just
Sure.
flowed again, just flowed.
Yeah.
So what was the blind date? Where did you go?
well, you picked me up.
I'm going to let her answer, because she will correct me, because she'll say that's not where we went. So you might as well take the microphone and
But
go
it's
for it.
so interesting when I think about how it would be today compared to what it was back then, because there were no phones.
Yeah.
I had no picture of him. I mean, so it was a pretty blind date.
This is not
So
online
other
dating.
than they gave him, I gave permission that he could call me to our couple's friends. And so he had my number, and I just waited. It's like, well, if he calls, he calls. If he doesn't, he doesn't. No big deal, because I didn't know anything about him other than she said he was a dentist and very nice.
Right.
And
So she thought, 2 kids, myself, a dentist, okay. Financially,
no, but they
Free,
also had
free
said,
teeth cleaning.
For life.
but they had said that you had just gone through a divorce too, and it seemed like it was the same time frame. I was a couple of years past the first the initial separation, and you were too. And I think both of our divorces were that summer of July, right before I moved up here. So
Right.
it seemed like God was moving the pieces, as we look
Yeah,
back.
we always say God's moving our checkers, and we welcome that.
And how we could have ever met, it's just...
Right.
Because I was the
interesting.
first and
never
only
dated.
person you dated. I mean, what are the chances that she gets me?
What are the chances?
Right.
I want to hear her report.
Being humble is always the hard part for me.
So anyway, the actual date, you called me up and I said, sure. And you came over and you picked me up and met him at the front door. And, it's like, oh, hi. It's the first meeting of seeing somebody because you don't have any picture of them at all because there's no phones, no text, nothing.
Yeah. And you didn't slam the door, so.
No.
And I was so broke. I mean, I had to borrow a car from my ex-wife
Yeah, that's right.
to pick her up. So, I mean, I was broker than broke. I mean,
Well, you had that white truck, but it was all full of
oh
rust.
yeah,
with
I call it the White Stallion, but if you rode in it, there was a hole in the floor, and if you went on new blacktop, you got every black spot all over you.
So we
And there
thought-
was bait coming out from behind the seat because I fish a lot. And
So
she married me anyhow.
Quite a catch.
Well, he wanted to improve his chances, so that's why he borrowed this car. So to me, it looked like it was a nice car. It wasn't anything fancy, but it didn't have holes in it or rust.
So
So
anyhow,
yeah, I think we just, you picked me up and I think we went out to what was that place out on the bay? Crow's Nest?
don't ask me.
I don't know.
Don't.
Eagle's Nest.
Yeah.
It's not there anymore.
No.
And we just went out to dinner and we just told our stories to each other and just talked and enjoyed the conversation. And
Yeah.
we found out how much our stories were very similar from each other. And
Well, and what I was saying before, like the report card, it's like, and she's Catholic. It's like, okay, it's bringing me back home. It's my roots
Yeah.
again. It's like it just flows when it's God's will, and so we were very tuned into that. And at the time, it was like we didn't even know what spiritually growing together meant. For some people, it's going to church on Sunday, and that's a great part of it by all means. But there's more to it than that.
Right.
Not a spectator sport.
yeah.
Right.
But I think we knew at that first date that what our values were, and that growing in faith and our faith in God was really important to both of us.
Yeah.
I was curious, so it sounds like you had a good experience on the first date, but then,
Then what
how
happened next?
Then what? It's
Okay.
I
like
ran out of money.
the progression of the progression of.
I had to give the car back.
Yeah, you did. Now the truck comes and picks you up.
Yeah. So I mean,
Now
And she
what?
got in anyhow.
and I got, yes, the truck did come at the second. That's right. No, yeah.
That's funny.
But anyway, yeah. Then you just dropped me off, and then it was. Then you have to tell your story because I just went home and it was a nice time, and I'll just whatever. If he
Right.
calls me, good, and if not, that's okay too. Whatever. But I would look forward to that he would call me. Now you tell your part of the story.
Well, it was interesting because Barb's 3 years older than I. I hope you don't
No,
mind
that's
that,
fine.
because I'm only 48. Never mind. Where was I going with this?
Your take on after the first date. You went home and you had to ponder.
Yeah, well, this is after
It was the first date.
dating a person and a couple, and I remember this. I remember it's like, oh, you know what? I was even told that the people I'm dating probably isn't a good fit, and that's usually a good sign when they're recognizing that your choices aren't great. So I prayed to God and I said, God, I know I have something to offer. I have no idea who I'm supposed to even meet because I'll leave that up to you. And that's when the checker pieces just seemed to fall into place. When I allowed God to move my checkers, yeah, it was amazing, and it kept growing. And I mean, then
But what were you pondering before you called me again? Because we had one date now.
I was pondering I'm what, about 36 now?
No, you were 35. Anyway, that's
See,
fine.
That's why you asked.
So it doesn't make how much difference.
Confirmation right there.
Well, see,
So
I had just had a birthday in December.
that's
so,
okay. 35 is just fine.
No, and his birthday's the end of January. So when we met, we
Okay,
were.
well. Anyhow,
By the second date, you're a year
Yeah,
older.
yeah. So no, you were 34. Yeah. So really,
Aged.
yeah.
so all of a sudden you're approaching life like, you know, you got a second chance.
Right.
And not having any children, that was pre-decided before we even got married. And, you know, mistake number one, but not my choice. But it's like, well, we enjoy each other's company. We'll just go forward. Well, her kids filled that void tremendously for me.
Right.
But what you said is whether you should call me again. What you have shared with me is, should I call her again or not call her again? And
Well, I knew if I called that it would keep going. And she was 3 years older than me, and we're at that point where it's like, well, do I want to have a chance to have children of my own? Well, and so all these things are going in your mind, but it's like, oh, you know what? We really enjoyed each other's company, and at a deeper level, not just the surface stuff. And so I knew if I made the call, I knew it would keep going. So I made the call.
And that was it.
And how long did you date before you actually got married?
Almost 2 years.
45 minutes.
That long?
No, you better ask Barb that one. I don't know.
No, we met like right after Christmas,
You
and
were
then
37
in
or 38, right?
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
was 30. I must have been 38 because we got
Please
married
don't
on my
get her
40th
started.
birthday,
There you go.
which was 2 years later
There you go.
in December. So, and it was, I mean, and we just dated and enjoyed each other, and we did so much with the kids, you know, skiing, and we loved the outdoors, biking and camping, and
Yeah.
so that was all part of those couple of years. And
I'm curious, you see this in the movies and on TV a lot, where the person has kids, meet, second relationship, they meet this person, and the kids don't necessarily, I think, what's the movie?
Brady Bunch.
No, there was a movie just on the other night with the twins, and they don't.
Trap.
The Parent Trap.
the Parent
Oh,
Trap,
yeah.
yes,
Thing
and
where
then
the kids don't necessarily like the new person.
yeah.
Yeah.
What would that have been? Just a deal breaker? I mean, but because it sounds like they absolutely loved you, Jim. But what if that wouldn't have been the case?
I don't think that would have been a deal breaker.
If they didn't like you,
If they didn't like me,
right? Or if they were if they didn't like me with you.
You know, to answer that, you'd have to get down to conversations you have with the kids. It's like, why are we having a problem? I had this conversation with the kids once. I was never the disciplinarian by any means, but
But it was good. He took the back seat, and
yeah, and
I think that's one reason it worked. So
Sarah, her daughter,
their dad was the disciplinarian. We worked together, very respectful of each other.
extremely well, extremely, and back to her report card, A+, A+, A+. It's like, because if you start seeing all these cracks, it's like, but it was truly, their kids came first no matter what. I didn't have to discipline anything. It's like, no, Barb would say, you're going to have to talk to your dad. It's like, yeah, talk to your dad. But I know Sarah was a little reluctant. Ben, it's like he was attacking me from day one, but Sarah
playfully.
Sarah was what, 10
Playfully.
years? Yeah, well, Sarah was 10.
She was in 5th grade. So,
Something like that,
you're getting
10,
into those tender ages
So
of
she's a
middle
little more
school and-
sensitive to this man showing up, and
Sure.
and that came slower. And at one point I said, some kids don't have any parents that love you. You guys got 4, so what's wrong with that? And it was always light and easy. We had fun together. We created a rule: no put downs in this family. We support
Only
each
build-ups,
other.
no
Only
put-downs.
build-ups, because it can go too far, and we wanted to make sure that that was back to God's plan.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, speaking of God's plans, you mentioned earlier you're both interested in spiritually advancing, especially within your marriage. What did that look for you over the years? What has clicked with you spiritually? I know you go to Mass all the time. Is there anything else that?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
brought you
I think,
together?
back in the very beginning when we were dating, and this was new for me, to continue to date, what was really important to me was to go through the annulment process. To feel really free and clear, and it was such a healing process, and it was very early, and then you decided you would do it too. So
we did it together.
So we actually, he reflected on his, and I reflected on mine, and we completed all the work. And I think that's what really secured us in our faith going forward together, because we both went through the process at the same time. And then I felt really clear and healed to go forward with another relationship. Seriously, a relationship. So
Father Willie was who we went through the annulment with, and
well, no,
we did our evaluations or whatever.
that was when we were going to get married.
Well,
that we met
okay.
with him. Not the annulment.
Well, anyhow, all the answers, Father Willie accused us of cheating because we lined up so well together.
Yeah, as we were doing he did the marriage prep with us. So
I didn't cheat.
I think we had 100%.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Well,
I don't know.
it was like.
But that
wow,
was 2
you
years
too.
later, and
So again, it just flowed.
Well, oftentimes in those inventories that the young couples take, I mean, a lot of them come back and they're like, we never even talked about that.
Yeah.
Right.
They never affected them in their life yet. So I mean, you both had gone through this before.
It was an
Right.
amazing tool to get us
Yeah.
to talk to each other
Right.
beyond
Right.
the form. So that was very good.
And one other thing I think that was really good in our growth in our faith was we worked with the focus couples, the
marriage
for their marriage prep.
Right.
For about 10 years. Now, we didn't have a lot of couples. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 a year. We worked with Deacon Don, and I think that was really valuable because we would always be reflecting on our own relationship again, and we'd be growing again in our faith as we were having conversations with the couple.
Yeah, if you teach it, you learn it.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of thing. And I mean, balancing out all the phases, like when we were in the middle stage of balancing out work and time and kids and all of that. But again, you reserve time for what you value. We reserve time for Sundays and taking the family together as a family, and we reserved that. If you don't reserve it, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
So you talk a lot about the connection to church and your spiritual life, your faith life. What are the other connections? Like, what else do you do to help your relationship to grow? And like your hobbies, your other interests. What keeps you together that way?
I can answer that. All the way through, right from the get-go, we developed. We encouraged each other, and we were always kind of in like, should we buy 2 bikes together? Okay, spontaneous. Let's go buy 2 bikes together. Let's go. Should we get into kayaking? And so we constantly. I mean, I couldn't get Barb to go ice fishing. Let's say, but we were always encouraging, always developing more common interests. And that also went for me and her kids. I golfed because that was a common interest that I could develop with her son, and we did all that. But that balance of life between working, loving, playing, and worship. I was told that the more that you can expand that in every direction in balance, the happier you'll be. And that was words of wisdom to me that always seemed to keep coming back. And when things were out of tune, something was out of balance. Like, for instance, prior to the marriage, it's like all dedicated to the career, forget about the other parts. Well, that doesn't work,
Right.
So again, balancing that out and taking that to every aspect of life I think that was a big cornerstone for us. So
Yeah,
we had
and-
fun.
Yeah,
We had a
we
lot
did.
of fun, and you know, we shared in the happies and the sads and all of it. But God was always in the center,
Right.
all of it. I became confirmation sponsor, not bragging, but became confirmation sponsor for her son
Oh,
and
both of my
daughter,
kids
and now
in high school.
2 of our granddaughters, her daughter's daughters.
Yeah.
Have been confirmed. and
So
he was the
not that
sponsor,
I'm
So
an
again, that's a
authority on
faith
it, but
growing,
it was
just-
just
Right.
it was like a nice feeling good about
Right.
the whole picture, not about me.
I mean, as I hear your story, it seems as you both went through the divorce and had that, maybe describe it as that emptiness, that desire for more. I was reading an article recently about they did a study of, I think it was mainly young people. It was young people, and they went through all the situations in the world today of open marriages, not getting married, living together, and it said at least over half of the ones that they surveyed, they still had the intention of coming together as a couple. That they wanted to meet somebody, and that would be their happily ever after marriage. And even though, in spite of all the things that happened before that, or what was happening in the immediate for them, they still had that desire to meet somebody, to grow together, to do family, and that would be their real life. And I guess I hear that in both of you, that as you went through your life, you both got married, and it was a little rocky in the first marriages, but there was still that desire to meet somebody,
Oh yeah,
right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
to be together in a good, healthy relationship that you could grow,
Right.
and allow the other person to grow.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I always come back to that balance because he's the one that brought that to me, and it always made so much sense. And in the middle of this, after the kids were off to college, and our schedules didn't match with me teaching and with Jim dentistry, and you were going to seminars. And again, we wanted to have more time together. So I actually early retired at the end of '97 when the kids were in college. And then I came to work in his dental office.
That's right.
So, I mean, it was a wonderful opportunity. I learned a whole new business. I oversaw the building of our new office with your dad's.
Oh my goodness!
Oversaw
yeah,
your dad.
Another A plus.
Because his dad was the.
She gets the A+ for putting up with my dad because he had his own opinion of what my office was going to look like, and she had to keep
So
watching
I was down
him.
there all day. I was like, Martin, And then I'd come back and report to Jim. Then we'd have to go over to his dad's and say, now listen, this is what we want.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a great experience. I love working with his dad. He's just a real character, just like, this guy.
Yeah, but he would change the plan. He wouldn't even talk to me.
And he wouldn't tell us.
Well, you might need a brick pillar going in. No, we want a special pillar that we're going to order. Did you order that? No. So the bricklayers are out there and they're putting up the brick, and my dad goes out and says, they changed their mind. It's
Yeah,
like,
they changed their
we
mind.
never
Yeah.
said we wanted a pillar. So that's what we were. So
There was, humor.
A+ on her report card
Yeah.
again.
Lot of A pluses.
Oh my goodness! It's like, all right.
So anyway, we made it through
Speaking
that.
of A pluses, I mean,
Yeah.
in social media, Facebook particularly, you get this feeling like everybody's just perfect, right? They put up their perfect pictures, their perfect family, the perfect activities, perfect dinner they went out to. Everything's perfect. And when I see you two at church, I mean, you have inspired me. I mean, you seem like the perfect couple, right? But I gotta also think that there's probably a side of your marriage that hasn't always been perfect. So, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges?
This is what I always put to the young couples when I'm before marriage. I say, so what bugs you the most about the other person?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I would.
Most challenging. That you can say
Well,
it.
he's
that you
going
can
to
say
find
to
a
the public or not.
lot to say about me.
I was told I can't talk at this point.
Jim is pleading the fifth.
We want to stay married.
Well, challenges, first of all, when we're in the busy part of the office,
when I was working for him. That was a big
You're
challenge.
both working in the same place. You
Yeah.
can't shut off the office. It goes continuous. We had a rule by 9 o'clock. We try to talk about something other than the office, and that would last about 10 minutes. Then we'd be right back to the problems of the office. It's like, oh. So that was a challenge, but we got past it.
That was like 97 until, retired in 15. So it was a big chunk of our marriage. And eventually we got an office manager like the last 4 years, which helped because then I could pull back away. I know at one point, it was a different situation for me working in his office because I was caught between, he's the boss, I'm married to the boss, I'm doing all the business part of it, and HR, and then you have employees. And basically I had...
And the two don't mix.
I lost a colleague of friends at that point. From when I was teaching, you have you're on the same footing. All of a sudden I was like an island. So at one point you said, you've got to do something to put yourself out so you can meet some people.
Meet new friends. Get into
And
some
so he
social.
said, okay, I give you a week to think of something you're going to do. And I'm still working at the office. I'm like, okay. So it's like, well, let's join the tennis club. I liked tennis, but I hadn't played very much. So we both went over to
I never
Western.
played tennis.
And we joined at Western. And then we took Tennis 101, 102. And then you went back to work. And then I kept on, and I ended up getting in some tennis leagues. And so it was a whole group of women that I connected with over there. So then
She beat me in tennis consistently.
And I know, we were very competitive with each other.
So it sounds like Jim not only gives report cards, but he gives assignments. Wow, this guy. Good job, Barb.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's an important lesson though. If you're only together as a couple,
Right.
it doesn't work for very long. It's not a healthy thing.
Well,
you really need outside interests. You need other friends. You need.
And the balance got off. It was all work. We had no play.
We
We didn't have time for it.
I had a special part of my life that I think balanced it out well, and that was I would put in Monday through Thursday, I would put in 10-hour days because there's a lot of time beyond what seeing patients. It's organizing cases, it's doing all of that stuff right. And so Friday was my day. I could do whatever I want, which it always turned out to be fishing or something. But it was usually, it's like, see ya, I'll be home tonight.
Right.
And so it was my time to and her time also, and then we'd come back and we'd have something interesting, different from our days, and so on, and so that
You
was
caught a fish this big.
Right. Yeah, I'm
all the
always
stories.
changing his story so that we don't get along on.
the one-handed
He
guy
makes
that said
the
I got
fish
one this
story,
big.
And I'll say, no, Jim, it
Sure.
wasn't that big.
So,
That's where we disagree.
but then I would reserve, and Barb would reserve Saturday and Sunday where this was our time,
Okay.
and
Nice.
her kid's father, he would have them every other weekend. So, we
When they were
would plan
growing up.
events with
Yeah.
the kids or without the kids or whatever it was, and
Sure.
it really created that balance very well again. Getting back to what you were saying, I read this in a book somewhere. It's like whatever you dwell on, that's what expands for you. So if I dwell on the things that drive me crazy from Barb, not that she has any, but if there were any,
There's got to be a couple of bees.
You're right somewhere. Come on here.
and that would expand, and I would, and you get more of that. And the converse of that is if I focus on the things that I love about Barb, then that expands for me. And I think that was good advice because sometimes I have to pray. I have to say, God, my attitude sucks. Could you help me out with this?
Right.
Which, that kind of leads me to my last question, and that would be, you could talk about advice. So for young couples, what advice would you give them as they're starting out on this journey?
Do you want to answer that, or should I? You can.
Or how about
Well,
Well, I
It'll
would
be
say
the same answer, I think.
Barb will be the judge of that.
Go ahead.
No, you start.
All right.
And
Well,
I'll add on.
the cornerstone to me is, boy, God at your center for a marriage. I mean, it creates everything. How do you argue? How far do you go? Do you put people down? Do you not put people down? So there's a code of ethics that go with this whole thing. There's a beauty in the Mass when you let it all go and you give each other a kiss. Mm-hmm. So I can't say enough about how let God rearrange your checkers, because it worked.
And the balance
Yeah.
of life, of the four corners. And we would always come back to that, and we would be able to recognize when we were getting off. Mm-hmm. Too much work. We never seemed to have too much play, except now in retirement we play more.
If I had to go in the shed out there and spend the night, well, then I know I had to work on stuff.
It's a little too far.
But I would say we're very, it's like salt and pepper or whatever. We're just opposites. We have different gifts.
We do.
I, being a piano player, I
Precise.
count very precise, 4 beats in a measure, and, and...
I have 4, 5, 6. I mean,
Doesn't matter to you.
Just depends whatever. I tried singing along, and because she plays the piano doesn't lie. So I hit a wrong note. She hits that note 15 times, like a teacher would. It's like, what? I thought I was there.
So I like things neat and orderly, and he's really laid back. He has a sense of humor, so he lightens me up. It's just a balance back and forth.
We will wake up and Barb has a checkoff list of things to do.
Honey-do list.
Honey-do list. It's like, no, what are we going to do for fun? That's my checkoff list today. Are we going to go golfing? Are we going to go ride? No, we were going to clean
We're
the
gonna do
gutters, we're gonna
taxes, and
rake
we're
the
gonna
yard, we're going to
wash
and
the
then after
windows.
that, it's like, I don't think so.
Communication.
It's
Yeah.
communication, right?
So I guess somewhere we had to find a balance there, and because I play all the time, and nothing would get done. The place wouldn't look like this, I can tell you that.
Jim, I love the image of the checkers, and I think as we look
Yeah.
at this year for the sacraments and the grace of God, and recognizing that some moves, sometimes there's good moves on the checkerboard, and sometimes you're not quite sure where to go. Sometimes you know you're going to lose. Sometimes you got them, and I got this one. But within there's the unexpected. There's the challenge of being able to see that there's something bigger than myself.
Oh yeah.
And in a marriage, they're living right next to you.
Oh yeah.
That's something bigger. That's something different. That's some other possibilities. So
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. It's a beautiful expression of how we need to rely on God. We need to rely on the bigger ideas, possibilities. It's not about me. It's not even about you two. Right. And there's more than you two in a marriage.
You get to a point where you learn to recognize when your checkers are being rearranged, and you welcome that.
Yeah.
And I can definitely feel that none of this happened by chance.
Right.
I mean, when we can celebrate Thanksgiving dinner with the kids and their dad together, that's all a wonderful
Beautiful
thing. The kids never had to choose mom or dad or any of that. We're all, we call it the committee.
And Jim didn't want that be referred to as the stepdad
Because it was too rigid.
because it was too rigid. So
Curved dad.
So he called himself the curved dad. So he signs everything. Curved dad.
So that's what you're dealing with here.
Kids know it.
Thank you for sharing your marriage.
Oh my
you're
goodness.
welcome.
It
Hopes
was,
and dreams
It was
and-
fun.
Yeah. Good to chat. Good to
Yeah.
help others get a little vision for themselves. Where is your marriage? How do you remember your marriage if you're if you're no longer married?
It's a journey,
What do
and
you
we
look forward
just
to?
Start early with God at your center.
right.
Yeah.
You know, and we all come from different beginnings. We both had the fortune of having that as our center growing up.
Right.
And if you don't have that, start.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess one thing I would say is you're starting to date somebody, ask them to Mass, see what they say.
Yeah.
And whether you agree or you disagree, whatever, it starts the conversation, and maybe you want to know that.
Right. Right. Right.
Well,
So-
thank you for welcoming us into your home. Such hospitality.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.